Amidst the doubts and confusion, no one else bothered Vaan despite their curiosity. They watched him freely ascend the Black Mountain, which hadn't been done by a newcomer in a long while. Everyone had grown accustomed to the newcomer bullying and treated the loss of wealth as a way of respecting the seniors. After all, they had all been newcomers to the Black Mountain and also went through such an experience. The entire Black Mountain had countless uneven flat surfaces from top to bottom and came in different sizes. But regardless of their varying sizes and elevated shapes, they were all called the Black Mountain Steps. Some steps could only fit a single person, while others could even fit up to 100 warriors seated in the lotus positions. Furthermore, the single-person steps were generally used for meditation, and the larger steps were used for practical training. However, there were no existing rules that allowed warriors to reserve the larger steps for their sole occupation. As such, warriors commonly engaged in physical conflicts over them. Even if someone arrived at the large step first but kicked off later, they would have no one to blame but themselves for their inadequate strength. On the Black Mountain, if one wanted more rights, having a bigger fist was the only way. A senior warrior quickly frowned after Vaan climbed onto the same large step he was using to practice a new martial skill. Oi, brat. Can't you see I'm already using this spot? Oh, don't mind me. I'm just passing through. Although the senior warrior was displeased with Vaan's brief passage, he was unwilling to waste time and effort turning it into a big deal. For him, every moment he spent on the Black Mountain was precious. Okay, Makuram sighed before advising Vaan, you should avoid passing through other people's steps, or you will end up offending a lot of martial brothers. Thank you for the advice, Vaan casually replied, shaking his head after a glance at the senior warrior. Makuram had joined the martial hall 30 years ago. With his above-average martial talent, it wouldn't be surprising for him to be a rank 4 body refiner. Unfortunately, he had once overexerted himself on the Black Mountain and suffered a grievous internal injury that had never fully healed. As such, his strength has stagnated at peak rank 3 body refiner. Normally, body refiners of this level could reach up to the 390th step on the Black Mountain. However, due to the internal injury of the past, Makuram could only train around the 100th step to avoid aggravating his old wound. Although Vaan didn't know about Makuram's past, he could at least see the person could not train on higher steps due to his sequela. In a matter of minutes, Vaan had already ascended to the 400th step, surprising all observers. Although the height of the steps one could reach wasn't directly related to one's body refining strength, it was still a good indicator. As such, most warriors who could reach the 400th step were at least low rank for body refiners. Damn, that new guy already reached the 400th step in such a short time. His internal tempering is quite solid. Tisk. Only quite solid? You don't believe that young man is a low rank for body refiner yet? Do you think low rank for body refiners that young are cabbages? He looked like he was still in his 20s. Even if he was a 29-year-old low rank for body refiner with a baby face, this kind of talent is still rare in the Imperial family and the ducal factions. You're right. It's rare but not unprecedented. While the martial warriors were speculating about Vaan's strength, Vaan continued to scale the Black Mountain steps indifferently. Since Vaan had never endured such intense gravitational pressure, the gravitational pressure beyond the 400th step was no joke to him. He could feel the burden from the gravitational pressure, but it was still far from suppressing him to the point that he could no longer advance. In fact, if Vaan were only aiming to see how high he could climb, he wouldn't have an issue climbing beyond the 550th step, provided that the increase in gravitational pressure remained consistent. However, that was clearly not his goal. When Vaan reached the 450th step, he finally decided to halt his ascent and meditate on one of the single-person steps. At this level, there were fewer warriors around, and of those present, none were practicing martial skills. They were all meditating in silence. As such, the area was quite tranquil compared to the lower steps. The 430th to 460th step was around the limit of what mid-rank 4 body refiners could endure. As such, mid-rank 4 body refiners on this level would not have the spare strength to practice their martial skills even if they wanted to. Practicing martial skills under gravitational pressure wouldn't just improve their proficiency in said martial skills but also raise their strength. However, without adequate internal tempering for the level of steps, doing so was tantamount to suicide. In the history of the Black Mountain, there had been no shortage of warriors overestimating their abilities and inflicting cultivation crippling internal injuries upon themselves. The senior warrior whom Vaan had previously passed was one such example. Nevertheless, while everyone meditated to temper their internal organs and adapt to the gravitational pressure, Vaan meditated to perceive the Black Mountain's laws. Even if the Black Mountain was only a tiny fragment of a dead star, it was still part of a living star once upon a time. The stars contained the secrets to the highest level of the fire law in the universe. Thus, a fragment of a dead star would still possess lingering traces of the highest level of fire law. No matter how little it was, this level of fire law was far superior to the fire laws Vaan could perceive in the Red Dragon Tribe's land of fire. How could earthly flames compare to heavenly fire? Even though Vaan could conjure a miniature sun with his current law comprehension, its power was still that of earthly flames. In essence, it was just a big ball of fire, its temperature was a far cry from a true star. I wonder how much of the fire law I can perceive and comprehend now that the bottleneck on my law comprehension is breached. Vaan silently mused with anticipation. Although Vaan looked forward to his progress in the fire law, he had another equally important focus. While it was true that stars contained secrets of the highest level of the fire law, a shattered star was different. It didn't just contain secrets to the highest level of the fire law but also the secrets to the highest level of the spatial law. After all, there was a chance the fragmented star core came to Pangaea as a result of a supernova explosion, and the supernova of stars had a chance of forming black holes. Of course, the supernova of smaller stars wouldn't form black holes, but Vaan was confident the Black Mountain was the fragmented star core of an especially large star. Naturally, its impressively strong gravitational field was one factor, but the main deciding factor in Vaan's confidence was the presence of spatial law. In fact, Vaan perceived the spatial law around the Black Mountain more clearly than the fire law, which also verified his doubts regarding his potential extreme spatial affinity. Vaan wasn't sure if there was anything more powerful than stars and black holes in the boundless chaos regarding the fire law and spatial law. However, it was certain that in the current chaos verse, stars and black holes embodied the highest level of the fire law and spatial law. In other words, until he was powerful enough to perceive the laws from black holes and stars directly, the Black Mountain was the best lucky chance he could come across for perceiving the fire law and spatial law. The value of the Black Mountain in terms of enlightenment on the fire law and spatial law far outstripped its use in tempering the body. It was a priceless heavenly treasure, but the great Rathalos Empire could only utilize it primitively. Previous chapter. Next chapter. Vaan was a man of great focus. The moment he was seated in the lotus position and closed his eyes, he immediately entered the perfect state of meditation, the state of emptiness. In this state, a person would not have any distracting thoughts, and their sense of the world would be heightened to the greatest extent as if they had become one with it. Normally, people would have to practice for months or even years before they could achieve this mystical state. Even the experienced ones would still take half an hour of meditation before entering the state of emptiness. Nevertheless, Vaan's state of emptiness was quite different from everyone else. He had thousands upon thousands of micro-thought processes in the back of his mind, constantly simulating scenarios and calculating probabilities. Logically, these thousands upon thousands of micro-thought processes should have hindered Vaan from entering the state of emptiness. It should have been his greatest challenge. After all, given the greatness of his mind, to not think was akin to not breathing. It was discomforting. He wouldn't be able to do it for prolonged periods. But contrary to one's expectations, these micro-thought processes did not hinder Vaan's meditation but even aid him. These micro-thought processes were subconsciousness that had been divided from Vaan's main consciousness to retain his humanity and sense of self. But even when divided, they were still a part of his consciousness. As such, it only took a single will to end all thoughts. When Vaan entered the state of emptiness, the micro-thought processes were like headless lambs without the command of the main consciousness. They scattered chaotically. This chaotic scattering of Vaan's senses allowed him to contact the surrounding elements around the Black Mountain and better perceive the laws in the area. Without any surprise, Vaan could sense most of the elements around the Black Mountain were of the fire attribute. On the other hand, the spatial elements were quite scarce. However, Vaan didn't find this surprising. Even if the Black Mountain came from a supernova star that formed a black hole, it would only be imprinted with the spatial laws that occurred during the initial formation of the black hole. It wouldn't record the complete formation. If the Black Mountain had been imprinted with the complete formation, it wouldn't have landed in Pangaea. Instead, it would have been devoured by the black hole long ago. Nevertheless, despite the scarcity of spatial elements, the spatial elements were more drawn to Vaan's consciousness than the abundant fire elements. The fire law is more evident, but I can perceive the scarce spatial law more clearly. As expected, my spatial affinity is exceedingly high, Vaan thought. A few moments later, Vaan rid himself of distracting thoughts and focused on perceiving the laws of the Black Mountain. However, it only took a few moments before he broke focus due to an unexpected discovery. Vaan knew his affinity with space was incredibly high. Still, the extent of it never ceased to amaze him. As his consciousness gathered the specks of spatial elements, they surprisingly formed a visual recording of the initial formation of the black hole that replayed in his mind. The amount of information he could dissect from it was far better than any simulations produced through human observation and technology from his past life. It was known that black holes possessed one of the most, if not the most, powerful gravitational forces in the universe. However, all matter caught within them would not be devoured directly but followed a pattern similar to the centrifugal flow of water in the presence of a sinkhole. Although this manner of devouring seemed slow compared to a straight-line devouring, it was actually extremely fast due to the sheer quantity and rate of devouring. Nevertheless, why did the black hole have such a devouring pattern? In fact, what was gravity? Although people knew gravity was the invisible force of attraction that pulls objects to each other, not everyone knew why this force existed. Of course, Vaan was aware the secret was related to the law of space. As Vaan observed the initial formation of the black hole and studied the curvature of spacetime that caused all matter to be devoured by the black hole in a spiraling pattern, his eyes eventually beamed with enlightenment. Gravity is just spatial compression. When space is compressed, the distance between objects naturally shrinks, Vaan mused. However, it wasn't just a simple spatial compression, there was an intricate way of compressing space. A black hole had layers upon layers of centrifugal directional spatial compression. Although it sounded simple, the spatial compression of a black hole involved the highest level of application. A normal demigod did not have the mental faculty to recreate it, even if they had comprehended the law of space. Even a rank 6 divine being would find it extremely difficult to achieve. However, this was Vaan's area of expertise. In the field of law manipulation, even the mighty ancient Empyrean Scarlet Sea would have to admit to being inferior to him. His ever-growing ability to absorb information and learn was unique and possibly supreme under the heavens. This intricate way of compressing space. This is the concept of cosmic flow. Vaan's eyes glimmered with profundity. Ding! Your understanding of the law of space has improved. Your authority of space has been raised. Law comprehension, space law, 1% of 5%. Unknowingly, Vaan's understanding of the spatial law soared and came infinitely close to the same level as his understanding of the fire law, which took days to achieve. In contrast, he had only meditated on the spatial law for a few hours. The disparity of his talent in these two laws was like that of heaven and earth, there was no point in comparing. However, Vaan felt strange as he perceived the law of space. It did not feel like he had gained insight into anything new but rather consolidated what he already knew. It was strange for him to feel this way since he knew he had definitely gained new insights into the law of space. Although Vaan pursued power, even he knew his rate of improvement on the law of space was abnormal. This made him doubt his origin once more. My perception and comprehensive talent are very high, but they shouldn't be to this degree. Vaan frowned. Vaan was already aware of one past life, but could it be that he had more than one past life? Perhaps in one of his other past life, he was someone peerless in the law of space, but if so, why didn't he have any memory of that life? Was it sealed? Or was he simply too weak to unlock multiple past life memories? Previous chapter. Vaan's great mind was a continuous whirlpool of doubts and chaos. He sought answers but would only get more questions in their place instead. Even if he had confidence in his speculations, they would remain unsolved mysteries without proof or evidence to validate them. No matter how much Vaan demanded the answers, they would remain unanswered. He was aware of that, and he also knew his distracting thoughts affected his session of law comprehension. As such, he quickly emptied his mind and focused on his meditation again. After Vaan's law of space reached 5% comprehension, the same as his law of fire in the past, he knew he had reached another bottleneck. Despite his heaven-defying affinity to space, he was still halted at this step. The law comprehension of 5% wasn't just a number, it represented the pinnacle of power a demigod could muster. It was the wall dividing mortals and the divine. Vaan's comprehension of the law of fire only managed to break through this 5% bottleneck due to a stroke of luck. That said, Vaan had no intention of stopping his comprehension session on the law of space. Since he had broken through the bottleneck once, the second time would be easier. Even so, the second time would undoubtedly be different from the first time. The trace of divinity Vaan acquired from his dual practice with Henrietta was, in truth, a glimpse of Empyrean Scarletzia's soul fragment. It had taken him time to understand the structure of Empyrean Scarletzia's soul fragment. However, the moment he did, he understood many things, and the path to the divine became clear. The relationship between a normal human soul and the body was like a small cloud of mist trapped within a glass jar. On the other hand, a peak demigod soul would be like liquefied cloud mists that had completely filled the glass jar, leaving no further room for any addition. The quantity of cloud mist would not increase unless the glass jar became bigger or the cloud mist was condensed. The secret to becoming a divine being lay in condensing the soul into something denser. A divine soul was one that would not scatter in the event of the body's destruction. Whether it was the soul of a normal human or peak demigod, they would both experience death from the scattering of their souls once the body accommodating them was destroyed. Only a divine soul would not. Although Vaan had no idea how long it would take him to achieve such a solid state of the soul like Empyrean Scarletzia's soul fragment, he figured he only needed to reach a semi-solid, malleable state of the soul for it to be considered a divine soul. Nevertheless, condensing the soul was easier said than done. According to Lord Narvim, soul masters weren't extremely rare for a reason. Even in chaos, there must be very few who could manipulate the world with a thought and cultivate the soul in the truest sense. Although Vaan had been suspected of being a soul master, he wasn't one, or at least not yet. He didn't have the ability to influence the world with his thoughts alone. The strengthening of his soul was all due to his heaven-swallowing space. As such, even he had limited direct means of condensing his soul. He could only rely on external forces to assist him. Borrowing the suppressive force of the Black Mountain to condense his soul was one such choice. To perceive the law of space and condense his divine soul simultaneously was killing two birds with one stone. Alas, the gravitational force of the Black Mountain was very effective on his body but had little effect on his peak demigod soul. Even so, little effect was still something. I need greater pressure, Vaan thought. Having spent half a day on the 450th step, Vaan finally decided to ascend to a higher step to bear greater gravitational pressure. Many warriors weren't bored enough to stick around to watch Vaan meditate for so long and had long left to do other things. However, there were still a few rare exceptions that actually did. That guy is finally moving again. Who? The newcomer? Ha. He should have been on the 450th step for around 12 hours now. This is very impressive for a newcomer, but I guess he has finally hit his limit and is forced to descend. He is climbing to higher steps. What? Within a short time, a commotion erupted at the foot of the Black Mountain. After catching the news, dozens of warriors quickly returned to observe the situation. Nevertheless, regardless of who stayed and came, they were all dumbfounded by Vaan's progress. This is impossible. How can this newcomer improve so quickly? He hasn't even come down from the Black Mountain to restore his condition before challenging the higher steps. Maybe the 450th step wasn't his limit, and he was only taking it easy until now. Several warriors felt the corners of their lips twitch when they heard the latest guess. From the 460th step onwards, there were no more than 24 people on the Black Mountain. Moreover, they were all members of the older generations, having lived more than 80 years. Some were even over 150 years old. After all, above the 460th step were only peak rank for body refiners or stronger. Anyone weaker wouldn't be able to endure the tremendous gravitational pressure. This was especially so above the 490th step. Of course, it was still possible for one with lower strength to reach such heights if their internal organs were firmly consolidated, but such a capable genius was non-existent. At the very least, the great Rathalos Empire didn't have such a genius body refiner. When Vaan ascended to the 490th step, he almost gave a few old fogies a heart attack when they saw how young he looked. Nevertheless, Vaan ignored their shock and focused on himself. The pressure on this step is much better. It indeed has a better effect for condensing my divine soul, but this effect is still minimal, Vaan noted. After some calculations, he figured even if he ascended to the top, the powerful pressure at the peak still wouldn't be enough to help him form his divine soul. Instead, his feat would only alarm the entire empire. The Black Mountain's gravitational pressure was only supplementary, it alone couldn't help him form the divine soul. Vaan needed another method to use alongside it. Should I use the concept of cosmic flow? Vaan contemplated with some hesitation. To use the power of spatial compression to condense his divine soul was undoubtedly an extremely dangerous and risky move. After all, the slightest mistake would kill him. For that reason, Vaan wasn't too eager to attempt it. It's too early to form the divine soul. I should at least become proficient with the concept of cosmic flow to boost my confidence, Vaan sighed. The path to becoming divine was revealed but still out of reach. Even so, it was only a matter of time. Hey, old fart. Is it fun pretending to be young? What is the use of chasing undeserved fame and attention at this age? An old warrior called out to Vaan from the 495th step, believing Vaan was an old warrior who had altered his appearance. The youthful rejuvenation potion was the most common product for restoring one's youthful appearance. Although the youthful rejuvenation potion had no other benefits, beauty products were never cheap. Even so, anyone who could become a peak rank 4 body refiner wouldn't be short of funds. That was why the old warrior was so certain of his assumption. Think what you will, Vaan calmly replied, paying no further heed to the old warrior on the 495th step. He didn't see the need to explain himself. However, the old warrior was not satisfied with his response. Hee, the younglings might be ignorant, but I know you are definitely an old fart inside. Why don't you tell me your name? Perhaps I might know you, the old warrior said, softly chuckling. Vanderlyn Pendragon, Vaan flatly answered. Ha ha ha. The old warrior laughed, but his gaze became increasingly disdainful, knowing Vaan used a fake name. Stubborn to the end, huh? What a boring old fart. The old warrior lost interest in Vaan and refocused on his meditation. Vain old fogies using the youthful rejuvenation potion and changing their names to chase fame and young women was uncommon but not unprecedented. With such a unique name, the old warrior was completely certain Vaan was just another attention-seeking old fogey. After their short interaction ended, Vaan focused on the application of the concept of cosmic flow. This powerful method allowed him to compress a huge amount of space within a short time, which could be used in many ways. With Vaan's brilliant mind, he already derived many spatial skills within a short time. These new skills were mainly divided into 3 categories: offensive, suppressive, and defensive. No one could deny the crushing power of the black hole. Thus, the concept of cosmic flow undoubtedly possessed strong offensive power. However, Vaan believed the greatest aspect of the concept of cosmic flow didn't lie in its strong offensive power but in its suppressive and defensive power. He could replicate the gravitational pressure of the Black Mountain to suppress his opponents or train his own group of body refiners. Even witches could benefit from it. The concept of cosmic flow could also be used to seal away and restrict objects and people, trapping them within layers upon layers of space or suppressing his opponent's powers, potentially lowering their combat prowess. Provided that he was capable enough, Vaan could even create an infinite void of compressed space between him and his opponents, causing their incoming attacks to be like feet stuck in muddy swamps, moving incredibly slow in the eyes of others. If I use the concept of cosmic flow like a slingshot, my travel speed in the sea of stars can also achieve new heights, Vaan mused. There didn't seem to be any limit to the application of the law of space, the only real limitation was one's imagination. As Vaan endured the pressure of the 490th Black Mountain step, his comprehension of the law of space eventually surpassed the 5% bottleneck. In that instant, something seemed to have awoken in the deepest part of his soul, making him look blank as information and unfamiliar memories filled his mind. Although Vaan caused quite a stir with his ascension to the 490th mountain step, he did not draw strong attention from the imperial capital. Normally, such an achievement by a member of the younger generation would attract everyone's attention. However, the imperial capital presently had a greater concern: the conflict between Duke Zohar and Duke Gamliel. Within the first quarter of the past 12 hours, the 2 ducal factions discovered several dead bodies of their members in secluded places around the imperial capital. Some died of poison or single knife wounds to the heart and neck, but some also died from recognizable martial skills. More importantly, members of both ducal factions commonly practiced such martial skills. Of course, both Duke Zohar and Duke Gamliel had been scheming against each other for years. The death of these low-ranking members in their factions wasn't enough to alarm. Moreover, they could vaguely sense the intervention of a third party, one who wanted to see the conflict between their 2 ducal factions. Furthermore, it likely had nothing to do with Duke Zahir. After all, they had a good understanding of each other and knew none of them could have made a low-level mistake such as leaving evidence of their martial skills on the bodies of the victims. In other words, another force was fanning the flames of their conflict. However, even though Duke Zohar and Duke Gamliel arrived at that conclusion, they had no evidence to back up their suspicions. As such, it could only remain as it was, suspicions. Due to their shrewdness, a single splash in the pond wasn't enough to stir Duke Zohar and Duke Gamliel to take action against each other. They both adopted a wait-and-see situation. However, that didn't last long. In the second quarter of the past 12 hours, a few important members of their ducal factions were finally killed with the core martial skills of their factions. Inside Duke Gamliel's estate, the bodies of Bella Ravisk and Arth Brightglory lay on the floor before Duke Gamliel. At the same time, Lord Ravisk and Lord Brightglory grieved in front of their sons' corpses. Although Bella Ravisk and Arth Brightglory weren't exactly high-ranking members in the factions, they were both first-seat heirs of their respective households. Furthermore, the House of Ravisk and the House of Brightglory were the top two families supporting Duke Gamliel. Your Grace, I beseech you to seek justice for my son. He has died unjustly to the invisible palm force of the Nevim's clan under Duke Zohar. Lord Ravisk cried. Common faction martial skills could be learned by others, but the invisible palm force was the unique martial skill of Lord Nevim's. It wasn't a martial skill warriors could easily imitate just by seeing it. With Duke Gamliel's rich martial knowledge and experience, he could quickly determine the wound on Bella's chest was made by the current head of the Nevim's clan. Duke Gamliel's expression turned cold. Zohar, oh, Zohar. Your selfishness truly disappoints me. Even with outsiders trying to fan the flames of conflict between us, you still try to take cheap opportunities to weaken me, Duke Gamliel muttered, seemingly talking to himself before his eyes suddenly became fierce. Did you think I wouldn't figure out what you've done? Lord Ravisk, Lord Brightglory. Your losses also saddens me. Now, I will give you both a chance to take revenge. Lead our men to kill the most talented direct members of the Nevemza clan and Mujald clan. Make them feel your pain. Duke Gamliel ordered. Imperial capital, Duke Zohar's manor. In a meeting room filled with high-ranking members of Duke Zohar's faction, Duke Zohar sat in the main seat with a gloomy look, and his oppressive aura weighed down on everyone present. It was clear to everyone that the Duke was not in a good mood. In particular, Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald felt the most pressure. They couldn't help but tremble in fear every time their lord gazed at them. Have we found out who killed the first-seated heirs of the Ravisk clan and Brightglory clan? Duke Zohar inquired gloomily, glancing at Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald. And not yet, Your Grace. Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald simultaneously replied with hesitation while sweating profusely with pale expressions under the gargantuan pressure of Duke Zohar's gaze. Even if they knew they were innocent, they couldn't be completely free from the blame. After all, one heir died to the invisible palm force, and the sleeping fire lotus finger killed the other. Both were unique martial skills created by Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald based on their comprehension of the forces in nature. The invisible palm force utilized the concept of vibration to bypass one's opponent's defense and attack their internal organs. As evidence of Lord Nevemza's invisible palm force, Lord Ravisk's son had a palm imprint on his chest but died of a ruptured heart. On the other hand, the sleeping fire lotus finger was even more distinguishable. Its victims would suffer burns in the shape of the lotus once the dormant fire force planted inside them erupted. This was the effect of the concept of explosion from the law of fire. Martial skills that incorporated the forces of nature weren't martial skills any warrior could simply learn, let alone use. Only warriors with incredibly tempered wills from training could chance upon the forces of nature and borrow their powers. Furthermore, such warriors were usually all half-step transcendents or transcendent-level body refiners. As such, even if Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald had their personal martial skills stolen, only a few people in the Empire were capable of learning them. After all, they had to satisfy two requirements, possessing incredibly tempered wills and being enlightened on the specific concepts of laws. Most of the other members present believed Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald were guilty but too cowardly to admit their wrongdoings in front of their lord. Duke Zohar tapped the table repeatedly in thought before glaring at Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald again. Lord Nevemza, Lord Mujald, I do not doubt any of you, but you, yourselves, should understand just how difficult it is for others to replicate your martial skills. That's why I will only ask you once, did you or did you not kill the heirs of the Ravisk and Brightglory clans? Think carefully before you answer. Duke Zohar added veiled pressure to force their honest confessions. However, Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald did not hesitate to give their replies. It truly wasn't done by me, my lord. You have to believe me. That's right, my lord. Someone is trying to frame us. Moreover, they are extremely capable. Alright, that's enough, Duke Zohar sighed and lifted his oppressive pressure. He never doubted his men, but he had to quickly clear the suspicions the other faction members had regarding the two. Otherwise, the distrust would eat away at the faction and cause its dissolution. You've all heard it. Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald are innocent in this matter. I don't want to hear or see anyone pointing fingers at them, Duke Zohar strictly declared before stating, we have a more pressing issue. Even if we know Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald are not behind the deaths of the two heirs, the people from Duke Gamliel's side will not believe us. Even so, we have to give them an explanation. Otherwise, we will never be free from this blame. Since they won't believe us no matter what we say, aren't we just inviting humiliations upon ourselves by going out of our way to explain to them? Given the sensitive situation, they might even kill our messengers out of fury, Your Grace, mentioned Zajek, head of the Dark Blight clan. Going out of our way to explain to them is naturally unacceptable, but not making any effort to explain at all is even more unacceptable, Lord Darkblight. Varkar of the Stagmaw clan voiced. If we don't explain at all, what's the difference between that and basically admitting Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald killed those two heirs? In my opinion, sending a letter is sufficient. Our two factions are not close, there's no need to give them so much respect by sending a messenger, Varker added. You've made a good point. A letter, it is, Duke Zohar nodded with approval. Duke Gamliel's estate. My lord, a letter from Duke Zohar has arrived. A servant presented the sealed letter to Duke Gamliel with both hands after abruptly interrupting the high-ranking meeting. At the mention of Duke Zohar, Lord Ravisk and Lord Brightglory's eyes were quickly filled with rage. Even so, they kept their silence as Duke Gamliel read the content of the letter. Ha ha ha. Duke Gamliel suddenly laughed coldly, causing the room's temperature to drop. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat as they watched Duke Gamliel's hands tremble with fury. At the same time, the letter did not last 3 breaths after delivering Duke Zohar's explanation before it was torn to pieces by Duke Gamliel. What a good misunderstanding. Misunderstanding this, misunderstanding that. Are you trying to insult my intelligence, Zohar? If you're going to give me an explanation, at least put some more effort into it. Duke Gamliel coldly thundered. With such a half-hearted explanation, it was clear to him that Duke Zohar no longer bothered maintaining the surface peace between them. In that case, it also implied Duke Zohar was prepared to wage a war against him. In fact, the war between them had already started with the death of the 2 first-seated heirs. This letter was a declaration of war and a distraction. Duke Gamliel sprung to his feet in alarm. How insidious. To incite his rage and cloud his judgment. Are there any major movements from Duke Zohar's faction in the last few hours? Bring me the battle map. I want to see the distribution of Duke Zohar's forces in the imperial capital. Duke Gamliel demanded. Right away, my lord, the head servant complied. Previous chapter. Shortly after the battle map was brought into the meeting room and laid out on the table, Duke Gamliel studied the positions of all the marked families and forces under Duke Zohar and compared them to his own. Nothing seemed out of place, and everything was the same as when he reviewed the map last night. The major families and forces in the imperial capital were mostly divided by the 2 ducal factions they supported. The major families and forces situated in the wealthy northern half of the imperial capital supported Duke Zohar, and the rest in the great southern half rallied under Duke Gamliel. Only a few minor families and forces scattered across the imperial capital supported Duke Zahir. Nevertheless, any major movements from Duke Zohar's side near the central district, which divided the 2 factions, would be easily discovered by Duke Gamliel's people stationed nearby. However, the opposite was also true for the other side. But despite scouts reporting back every 15 minutes, no large movements from Duke Zohar's side were discovered. Duke Zohar did not mobilize his forces for a decisive battle with Duke Gamliel. Was I mistaken? Duke Gamliel frowned before pondering deeper into the matter. Logically thinking, Duke Zohar wouldn't fight Duke Gamliel head-on as it would benefit no one. Even if Duke Zohar won against Duke Gamliel, it wouldn't just weaken his military power but also the empire's. What was the point of sitting on the throne of a severely weakened empire? Just what are you planning to do, Zohar? Duke Gamliel muttered as his frown deepened. My lord, I've brought grave news. Our chosen candidates for the Rising Dragon Division are all dead. They have all been poisoned to death, along with the rest of the diners at Red Hot Wyvern Inn. What? Duke Gamliel and the other lords all stood up in disbelief and rage at the shocking news delivered by the messenger, who abruptly barged into the meeting room and forego his manners. However, no one had the heart and mind to criticize the messenger's action and only focused on the news he brought back. You're lying. Tell me it isn't true. Lord Baldum of the Veldiku clan grabbed the messenger's shoulders and glared at him with a fierce gaze, unable to accept the news. It's true, Lord Baldum. I wouldn't dare bring back false information. I saw it with my own eyes. The messenger was frightened but still found the courage to confess in all honesty. Arg. Lord Baldum immediately growled in pain of grief. The chosen candidates in the Rising Dragon Division for the upcoming grand event were all heirs or talented offsprings the lords of Duke Gamliel's faction had nurtured over the years. My lord, I want Duke Zohar and all of his people to accompany my son to the afterlife. Lord Baldum cried as his heart bled and burned with vengeance. Duke Gamliel closed his eyes with a painful expression, suppressing his great rage and sorrow. The nephew of his late wife had also been among the list of candidates registered in the Rising Dragon Division. He had also doted on his nephew and treated him like one of his sons. The atmosphere of the meeting room became especially heavy and thick with murderous auras once everyone realized Duke Zohar wanted to cut off their roots to cripple their development. How dare that person try to eliminate all his competitors before the grand event? Duke Zohar has gone too far. No, he has gone mad. He has no regard for the stability of the empire. Arg, I can't live under the same sky as him, my lord. Please command me to fetch his head. Please give me the order, my lord. I am willing to lead the troops to slay the tyrant. Multiple lords voiced their burning desire to kill their way into Duke Zohar's territory to collect Duke Zohar's head. These lords had been angered several times in the past 12 hours and found it no longer possible to hold back their rage. Duke Gamliel had taken a great deal of willpower to quell his rage and sorrow and clear his mind of irrational thoughts. He knew nothing was more destructive than actions clouded by hatred. Do not be hasty. Calm your heart and clear your mind. Blindly charging into Duke Zohar's territory is most likely what he wants. You must be alive in order to exact your revenge. Otherwise, you will only die a meaningless death. Duke Gamliel harshly rebuked his people. At the same time, he used his oppressive aura to quell the lord's fury. He couldn't help but frown at the Frown at the limited effect, realizing it was difficult, even for him, to control his people once they were overwhelmed by grief and hatred. At the same time, Duke Gamliel couldn't help but feel frightened by the invisible force guiding his faction and Duke Zohar's faction to slaughter each other. He felt powerless, like he was only a chess piece in someone else's grand scheme. Nevertheless, Duke Gamliel at least managed to stop Lord Baldum and the others from charging out recklessly without a proper plan. Lord Baldum. Duke Gamliel called. Yes, my lord. Lord Baldum answered, his heart thumped under the might of Duke Gamliel's calling. No matter what, Duke Gamliel's majesty, power, and authority still affected his clouded mind. You will lead our men to investigate the deaths of rising dragons. The red-hot Wyvern Inn is our business, and yet all our talented candidates were poisoned to death within it. What a colossal joke that is. Capture everyone working at red-hot Wyvern Inn and question them. Do not let a single person escape. You must get to the bottom of this matter and find out the source of the poisoning. If it's a dog from Duke Zohar's faction, kill him. If it's a rat from a third party, torture him. No matter what, you must find the culprit, their intentions, and their background. I want the complete information on my desk within 3 days. Why yes, my lord. Lord Baldum answered, dripping with cold sweats. His original fury was replaced by a gargantuan, mountain-like pressure from his lord. In Duke Gamliel's heart, he hoped the poisoning incident was Duke Zohar's doing. That would simplify the situation. Interference from an unknown power would only complicate the matter to a whole different level. Previous chapter. Imperial capital, Nevemza clan. Damn it. How could something like this have happened? Nazir Nevemza, the younger brother of the clan head, muttered as he clutched his head with distress. Ever since news of the two heirs' death spread, the Nevemza clan had been on high alert, and the number of people within the clan's territory doubled overnight as it received reinforcement from others in the faction. Nazir understood his older brother well and knew he wouldn't do something stupid like killing the Ravisk clan's heir with his unique martial skill. But even if his older brother was innocent, he also understood the Nevemza clan would never be free from the blame. As such, Nazir anticipated the Ravisk clan would come for revenge. However, he did not know when or how fiercely the Ravisk clan would retaliate. Vice head, there's no need to be stressed over this matter. No matter what, this is Imperial capital, where killing is prohibited without justifiable cause. The Ravisk clan is strong but not strong to the point that they would ignore the Imperial laws and kill their way to our doorstep, the head servant reassured reasonably. Furthermore, the Ravisk clan and Nevemza clan were quite close in power. Now that they also had support from other members of their ducal faction, the Ravisk clan alone would not be enough to trample them. Nevertheless, Nazir found no comfort in the head servant's words and gave a half-hearted laugh dismissively. Without justifiable cause, you say? The heir of the Ravisk clan was killed by the invisible palm force. That is more than enough justification for the Ravisk clan to seek revenge, not to mention the imperial laws mean nothing in the face of a major conflict between two dukes. The emperor had long turned a blind eye to conflicts between the three dukes. As such, no one would intervene in a conflict between two dukes if even the emperor wouldn't. The Ravisk clan is not stupid, it is even truer for the Duke Gamliel. If they dare come for revenge, they would naturally take our reinforcements into account. This will not be an easy fight should they come, Nazir added gravely. Vice head made very valid points. It was I who had not seen things clearly and spoke carelessly. The head servant acknowledged his inadequacies but then added, still, we have many scouts on the lookout, Vice head. If the Ravisk clan truly intends to make a move against us, we will be able to discover their large-scale movement very quickly and make preparations for it. Boom. Shortly after the head servant spoke, the Nevemza clan's front gates were shattered by a strong impacting force, sending stone shards flying inside. Several clan members were struck and injured, and a few were even unfortunately killed. Everyone inside the Nevemza clan's territory was shocked as they had no prior warnings of the attack. No one had seen it coming. Thud. With a heavy step, a strong warrior with a powerful and intimidating presence entered the Nevemza clan's territory and pointed his huge battle mace at the main residence with a ruthless glare. Go. Kill the dogs of the Nevemza clan and bring me their heads to pay tribute to my son. Bela Ravisk barked. Rumble. At the Ravisk clan head's command, the 3,000-strong warriors of the Ravisk clan charged into the Nevemza clan's open courtyard with high momentum. Kill, the warriors roared fiercely. Nazir's expression underwent a multitude of emotions as his face turned pale, dark, and finally red. Get into formation and fend off the enemy. Nazir thundered from the third-floor balcony of the main residence. Stop them, many clan members cried with abject fear. Even though the Nevemza clan's combined force was greater than the Ravisk clan, they were overwhelmed by their enemy's high momentum. Pucci. Pucci. Within moments, blood was spilled, and the main courtyard was painted red by both sides. Although the Ravisk clan had high momentum and the element of surprise, they couldn't completely make up for the difference in numbers and strength. Even so, every warrior from the Ravisk clan was filled with fury and fought like desperate beasts. They slaughtered their foes without any regard for themselves, even if it meant sustaining critical injuries and death. They gave their all to kill their opponents. The combined casualties of both sides quickly soared into the hundreds in a mere instant. The usual duels between warriors were merely child's play in the face of war. Human lives were fleeting like wheat on a farm as the Death Reaper harvested. How could this be? The head servant fell back on his rear as he trembled with fear, clearly horrified by the Ravisk clan's fearless determination. Scouts. What the hell were our scouts doing? With such a large-scale movement, we should have been notified ahead of time, the head servant barked with dismay. The Nevemza clan had no idea that their scouts had all quietly and mysteriously died before the Ravisk clan's forces arrived at their doorsteps. A similar situation also happened in the Mutual clan's territory, which was facing the furious onslaught of the Bright Glory clan. It didn't take long before the thunderous news of both places reached Duke Zohar's manor, shocking all the high-ranking lords under Duke Zohar. Bang! Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald simultaneously slammed the table and leaped to their feet in agitation. This is absolute madness. The Ravisk clan and Bright Glory clan are openly disregarding the imperial law and slaughtering people in broad daylight. My lord, please permit me to return and assist my people. The Ravisk clan and Bright Glory have lost their minds. My lord, please ask His Imperial Majesty to punish these evildoers. They have gone too far. Multiple lords expressed their outrage and pleaded for imperial interference, hoping they could borrow the power of the emperor to overturn the situation and minimize their losses. However, Duke Zohar shook his head helplessly. My imperial brother will not intervene in this matter. If he wanted to interfere with the disputes between dukes, he would have done so long ago, Duke Zohar firmly stated, shattering Lord Nevemza and Lord Mujald's hopes. We can only rely on ourselves. Let us be swift and lend our aid to the Nevemza clan and Mujald clan, he quickly added, full of gloom. The rabid dogs under Duke Gamliel were crazier than he had anticipated. No matter how crazy they were, they still followed Duke Gamliel's will. In other words, Duke Gamliel permitted such a situation to transpire. That crazy son of a... Previous chapter. While the tension of conflict between Duke Zohar and Duke Gamliel continued to rise, spreading death, fear, and unease throughout the imperial capital of the Great Rathalos Empire, the imperial palace remained indifferent without the slightest movement. But despite the imperial palace's inaction, streams of news continued to flow inside, keeping Emperor Vaan updated on the overall situation. Emperor Vaan listened to the reports from his Minister of Internal Affairs and Minister of Defense with a cold, detached expression. He didn't reveal the slightest concern for the two dukes who were his blood brothers. After all, their conflict had yet to reach the point where their blades were at each other's throats. However, even if they were, it didn't seem like Emperor Vaan would still concern himself with their well-being. Emperor Vaan only had one singular focus, the hidden force secretly stirring the chaos from the shadows. For dozens of years, I have been aware of your existence. But despite my efforts to uncover everything about you, your identity, people, strength, and purpose, not even the shadows of your tail have been seen all this time. And yet, this time, because of one single spark, you are all jumping out to fan the flames of conflicts. Have you all become that impatient to achieve your goals? Emperor Varen's eyes flickered with a chilly glint as he quietly muttered to himself. Magic had always been the weakness of the Great Rathalos Empire due to their single-minded pursuit of the extreme limits of body refining. Even when the Great Rathalos Empire became aware of the limitless magic application of mana, it only saw mana as a supporting tool for furthering one's path in body refining. This was because, back then, magic was a deep abyss of unknown possibilities. No one in the Armstrong imperial family knew if developing the empire in the direction of magic was worth it. Thus, compared to the risk that came with the unknown, the Armstrong imperial family chose the conservative choice, focusing on body refining, which they already had a rich knowledge of and were open to greater possibilities due to the emergence of mana. Thanks to that decision, the Great Rathalos Empire cemented its position as one of the most powerful nations in Pangaea. However, as magic continued to be developed by other countries, that firm position started weakening as early as 100 years ago. As such, after Emperor Varen reached the transcendent level of body refining, he chose to permit the development of magic. Shamans and witch doctors emerged after that, along with hidden threats that accompanied them. The Great Rathalos Empire's relationship with the Seven Witch Kingdoms worsened due to the existence of the hidden force that sought to plunge the empire into chaos. After all, many had suspected the involvement of the Seven Witch Kingdoms. Emperor Varen only realized that was untrue in the past several decades when he finally caught faint traces of demon involvement, which he didn't find surprising either. The real problem was which of the seven great devils were involved. Impatience or not, I won't miss this opportunity to catch you all in one fell swoop and learn everything. Emperor Varen coldly thought with a clenched fist. In a seemingly distant past of the divine realm, when the universe was still in its earlier stage of existence, a couple floated in the dark void of space as they gazed at a supermassive black hole ahead of them. The couple of one man and woman were both humans, but they were more than just mere humans. They had skins white like snow jades, eyes black like the starry night sky, and fluttering soft black hair like silk in the wind. Coupled with the Eastern dragon and phoenix robes they wore, which heightened their elegance and grace, the dashing handsomeness of the man, and the unrivaled beauty of the woman, they were like celestials that came out of paintings, stories, or one's imagination in the mortal worlds. They were existences akin to gods and leading figures in their era, the era of true divinity. While many were still figuring out how to become true gods, this particular couple had already, or rather, just recently become peak heavenly gods in the divine realm. The divine abyss of absolute beginning, the graveyard of gods and devils. Now that I am a peak heavenly god of space, I can finally try to explore this perilous region and uncover its secrets, the handsome man muttered with anticipation as he held the beautiful woman's hand and peered into the distant black hole together with her. Since the beginning of time, many have sought the secrets within the divine abyss of absolute beginning, and he was no exception. Feeling the beautiful woman's grasp of his hand tighten, the handsome man glanced at his wife affectionately and softly said, "You know, I may be the heavenly god of space now, but I still don't have complete confidence in venturing into the divine abyss of absolute beginning and making it back alive." "You don't have to accompany me on this trip, Scarlet," the handsome heavenly god of space stated. The beautiful woman called Scarlet gently shook her head and replied with a smile, "Wherever you go, I go. Be it in glory or dull, cultivation or the mundane, life or death, we promised to share everything when we consummated our love. There's no point trying to get rid of me now, Vanitas. Besides, for the longest time, I have always been looking forward to exploring the divine abyss of absolute beginning and uncovering the secrets of the universe with you. No matter the outcome, I am content as long as I am with you," Scarlet added tenderly. In response, Vanitas simply smiled back warmly. He had already anticipated such a reply. Since he understood his wife well, he also knew it was impossible to dissuade her from following him into the known region of no return. The divine abyss of absolute beginning possesses the mightiest devouring force in the entire divine realm. Since the beginning of time, it has also been swallowing up any and everything that fell into its net, not to mention the concentrated divine energy that wraps around it like a white blanket. We don't know what we might find inside the divine abyss of absolute beginning either, but I'm almost certain the divine energy, if we find any, would be of the highest purity and potency in the entire universe. Right, Vanitas completely agreed with his wife's statement. It was the most logical train of thought. Furthermore, it was also precisely because of that possibility that they were willing to take the risk to explore the divine abyss of absolute beginning right after becoming peak heavenly gods. Previous chapter.